Gaijin's setting themselves up as a niche publisher, aren't they? Besides their flagship World War II combat simulator War Thunder and another World War II air combat game Wings of Prey, they have one other title that's pretty much the same idea of warfare, but this time it's in space! Now, I was going to do this episode on Divine Souls, but I don't want to talk about it. Let's just say this game is less ready for prime time than Dragon's Prophet was in closed beta, featuring some hilera-bad voice acting, visuals on par with an iPhone game, and the stiffest combat with the most boring dungeons and questing I've seen for a while. Imagine someone trying to remake Vindictus for the Ouya and you have a general idea. I'd be surprised if it doesn't get shut down within the year. So, instead, we scrambled to find a replacement, and since we were working on War Thunder for that backtrack I just did, we decided to see what else Gaijin had to offer. This is the MMO Grinder, and it's time to look at Star Conflict. Star Conflict, not to be confused with Star Citizen, like I nearly did a few times when we were deciding on the next title, is a space combat arena shooter with a few other options for play. The upgrade system is very similar to War Thunder as well, allowing you to upgrade individual parts or level your ship in order to unlock further ships and further tiers. Despite Gaijin being a Russian company with a Japanese name, Star Conflict was developed by Stargem Incorporated, based out of Alexandria, Virginia. I suppose the similar themes and style of the game had Gaijin snap it right up to publish it. Unfortunately, if you dropped a ton of cash on Golden Eagles for War Thunder, they will not carry over to Star Conflict. Different games under different systems. Let's get going. The game has a fantastic aesthetic, while at the same time having a low impact on performance, and should run on just about everyone's system. The style is clean with minor bits of detail work, most noticeable on various ships of each faction, and the background details that make up each map. Hell, even simply undocking from your starting station of choice will show off the simple beauty of this game, with distant planets, asteroids, shipyards, mining platforms, and patrols making their way throughout the black. The attention to detail carries over to many of the various ship's abilities, such as the diffusion shield, which reinforces your shield with an energy-consuming variant to stop significant damage and encases you in a honeycomb-covered sphere. The ODG Chameleon module slowly begins to phase your ship out until you're completely invisible, and has a pleasant shimmering effect while you're stealthed. Phase shields will alter the color of your normal shield to match the damage type that they're protecting against, and give off brief color splashes when they're hit with weapons fire. There's also a minor change to the game that feeds into the visual design, as you can now play any of the faction ships in the game without having to be part of that faction. This is a welcome change, as you can now play with any of your friends and still pick the ship designs that you like. Want to play as the slightly evil-looking Jericho with their red engine trails and black motif? Go for it. Or maybe you'd be more into the less angular and more sleek blue of the Federation, or the golden bird-like designs of the Empire. If you're a fan of Firefly, Free Space, or perhaps Homeworld, there's a lot of ships that look suspiciously like they'd fit very well within those universes, and playing as a Reaver in Star Conflict does sound interesting. The game has some very enjoyable tracks, lending a good weighty base to the combat while flying amongst the stars. Lots of soaring orchestral-like tracks with a bit of electronic influence to highlight the sci-fi nature of the game, and accent moments of triumph and defeat, as well as giving a good bit of background music for the combat with alien combatants. There's a surprisingly good amount of effort put into the soundtrack for what's essentially an arena shooter in space, and the effort is certainly appreciated. The sound effects are also nice and weighty, giving satisfying thuds as explosive shells or missiles impact the shields. A quick burst of energy as a ship explodes, or the sizzling of lasers as they eat away at an enemy shield or hull. Granted, as plenty of pedants will tell you wouldn't actually hear any of this in real space, but it does add a good sense of impact to everything and makes your lumbering frigates or nimble interceptors feel more corporeal, even if not following the laws of acoustics. I do have to take special note for some of the distance shots sounding a lot like microwave popcorn. Maybe that's just me. This is to say nothing of the amusingly overacted voice dialogue within the game, where friendly ships will cry for aid while nothing is around them, or begin screaming for the enemy to simply just die, asshole, even if you haven't been shooting at anything. There's the usual overuse of military speaking patterns, to the point that anyone within the military will groan and roll their eyes. While the voice acting isn't awful, it also leaves a little bit to be desired, and seems a little bit rushed. Given the genre this game comfortably sits within, it's surprising to find that there's more to do outside of the usual PvP matches that these sort of games rely on. In addition to the PvP matches, the game allows players to play 4-man PvE modes, or even undock from the station and fly around the galaxy to explore, fight, and scavenge. We'll get in more depth in these in a moment, but I felt mentioning that there's so much variety here it would help if one of the aspects isn't up your alley. To begin with, it's a very good idea to complete the tutorial, not just to familiarize yourself with the game's controls, but to gain a bit of synergy and cash to start as well. That synergy is the new system that replaced an old experience bar. It now allows you to earn synergy for a specific ship while earning a small percentage of free synergy, in this case 5% for a normal ship and 20% for a premium. This synergy is used to level the ship up. Once your ship hits certain milestones, denoted by a lock on the path that's next to the ship in that tree, you can purchase the next ship. You can choose to fully level your ship as well, which will grant you an increase to your fleet bonus by 1, which grants an additional 1% free synergy in all your ships. To earn this synergy, you'll have several options within the game. There's the usual PvP mode seen in these types of games, which earns the highest amount of synergy per deployment, if you can find a match. PvE is broken into 3 rank ranges, which gives the highest payout of credits and a decent bit of synergy, and simply undocking from the space station to fight various mobs and gather loot will bring in a paltry amount of synergy and credits as far as we know in the lobby areas, but it can be rather enjoyable for a change of pace. It should be noted the PvE modes rotate with each hour, meaning if you're tired of playing a certain map in the PvE mode, simply wait for the hour to tick over and try again. Many will simply go to the PvP mode queues and fly about the galaxy when they wait. You can also load up another game in the background if you want. That may as well happen to a few Grindstone members who'd play War Thunder while they were waiting for their next mission to generate. As a note, many members of Grindstone commented the ship's handling was disorienting and oftentimes had them spinning in circles and losing track where the ship was actually aiming. To be fair, it's a very easy thing to do, as the actual aiming reticle is incredibly small and blends in with the rest of the ship's UI, so losing track happens all the time. To alleviate some of the pains, you can go into the oddly named Expert mode of the flight. It's a bit of a misnomer, as it actually makes the ship far simpler to fly by locking it to a more restricted camera system, like most arcade airplane games, while the basic mode will let you spin your guns and ships independently. It doesn't seem like much, but according to those members of Grindstone that have it on, it helps them considerably and lessens the sense of motion sickness. Seriously, that can be kind of an issue. I hope that the apparent Oculus Rift support comes with a free set of barf bags. After you get your ship set up to your liking, ensure that you select the contract from the top left bar, as these are used to earn loyalty vouchers from the various factions which will become necessary for leveling up equipment on your ship. This is a good and bad system, as while leveling up weapons and gear on the ships feels great, and helps greatly in combat, you can't help but feel like, rather than being outplayed by an enemy player in PvP, you are just simply outmatched, when they have pure purples and a max ship to face off against your level 2 with a couple of greens. Another major issue is that ships can have various rankings within the PvP, so you're very likely to fight a ship 3 ranks higher than your own. It does make the PvP feel less enjoyable than it should, as players with fully upgraded ships will rule the battlefield without fear that they can be toppled, while it makes the PvE and free roaming modes feel far more enjoyable while your upgraded ships begin to perform better with each deployment. Each ship has its own special function within combat, which breaks down to 3 main categories and 3 subcategories each. The 3 main categories are Interceptor, Fighter, and Frigate, denoted with a triangle, diamond, and square respectively, and represent their roles within combat. Interceptors are designed for quick maneuvers and harassing fire. Fighters are used for dogfighting and have decent mobility with their firepower, and frigates are slow-moving vehicles that pack a lot of shields, armor, and firepower to make up for their lacking mobilities. Each type of ship will have its own special module, which acts as the ship's ultimate ability, and are rather varied for the task at hand, even among the same type of ships. For example, a fighter command ship will have a special diffusion shield that it uses energy to absorb checks on the shield, while a fighter tackler will have the ODG Chameleon module that lets them turn invisible to set up an ambush attack or escape a fight that they might be losing. Besides these special modules, you'll have active modules that function as usable skills in combat. These modules vary depending on the main classification of the ship and can have various effects from buff auras to missile defense systems, repair systems to targeting systems, and really help give each ship an identity within that role. You'll notice that your ships get higher in ranking as they gain more active slots and passive slots that'll increase their shields, engines, and capacitors, making them far better than their lower ranked counterparts. It won't take long to realize what having all these various parts, including weapons and ammunition at the max level, will do for the player in the various game modes. There's also another leveling system atop this in the form of crew levels, but unlike War Thunder, these crews don't actually gain experience and instead gain levels based on the rank of the ships that you've unlocked. When you begin a game, you have a rank 1 ship, and thus your crew can select a rank 1 ability. Buy a rank 2 ship, and you can choose a rank 2 ability, and so on and so forth until you hit the max tier for your faction. Once you do hit that max, though, you'll be given a second crew with its own slottable abilities based on the faction that you hit max with, allowing you to set up specialty builds based on the type of ship that you'll take into combat. If you're a particularly determined player, you can even level all 3 factions to max and have 4 different crews to play around with. Along that top menu, you'll notice the Armory and Workshop buttons, which function as stores and crafting respectively. The Armory is limited space and can be upgraded with credits, while the Workshop will need various materials while playing in each match and scavenge in the open world to create items that can be slotted into your ship. The crafting system is relatively straightforward and offers up the ability to craft all kinds of components for your ship, assuming you have the recipe purchasable with credits and have the materials necessary to produce them. It might all sound pretty complicated, but it's a pretty simple game to wrap your head around, but allows a little bit of individual creativity within your ships. We seem to be running into a trend here lately, as we have yet another game with a small player base in the early tiers of the game, though, oddly enough, you'll likely see the game saying it's currently under heavy load and be tossed into a login queue. It would be interesting to see some user data on the title, as most early tier PvP matches will not only take up 18 minutes to find a match, but only have 4 players on each team, with bots filling out the rest of the roster. This could be a title where the early game is abandoned and new player uptake is extremely low, while the remaining player base all focuses on the late tier combat. There's of course a few bad apples mixed in, mostly in the form of harassing rammers who'll simply just fly around and ram into friendly ships while they're out in the open world portion of the game. They aren't much more than an annoyance and can be usually safely ignored, especially if your ship is currently under the various station protections throughout space. There are rumored to be player bots within the game as well, but we personally never experienced them, and most of the silent community will chime in and report them if it gets brought up. When you do get into structured matches filled with players, it won't take long to notice that it's a very silent affair. Almost no one says anything in chat within the matches for good or ill, so bringing along friends is highly recommended. Even the game's chat system is barren, with brief surges of chatter between long periods of silence. There's a flip side to this though, as many of the game's guilds, here known as corporations, will require members to have various voice programs to be eligible for that corporation to begin with, and this could be where the majority of the community is actually communicating at. Grouping up with the game is relatively straightforward, yet at the same time convoluted, as the group system is incredibly buggy. Many times members of Grindstone have invited others into a party to group queue for PvE or PvP, and had the system proclaim that the user they try to invite doesn't exist, or is already in the party but isn't actually in the party. Or they're just a member of another party that isn't even online anymore. There are minor issues in the grand scheme of the game, but there's something to be aware of. And yes, you will have to forcibly leave a party to play by yourself, even if everyone else in the party is offline. With that said, feel free to get 3 of your friends together and go out as a 4-man wrecking squad in the various game modes. If you want to take advantage of the current expansion's touted Dreadnoughts feature, then you'll need to join or create a corporation of your own. Sadly, that second option costs real cash, so be prepared to drop at least $10.50 or your regional equivalent just to create a guild with your friends. So what do the corporations offer to make up for that price? Well, honestly, not a whole lot that we could see. As Grindstone is a newly created corporation, we didn't have access to the corporate shipyards or laboratory that's a touted feature, and we couldn't even begin constructing a dreadnought or even choose which style we wanted to go with until we had at least 10 members into rank 9 or higher ships. That dreadnought feature does open up more of the game though, as a corporation can use their dreadnought to take over territory and begin mining out resources for the guild to use, but it's only viable for the most established of corporations. Without access to those features, the corporation system is your average generic extended friends list with options to spend more money to get a displayable clan tag or icon to represent your group. So if a game requires real cash to set up a guild, kinda makes you wonder what else you can buy with cash out points. Well, as previously stated, you will need cash to start a guild, in this case by buying Galactic Standards, accomplished by the button fittingly and hilariously labeled Get Standards. Yes, we are well aware of what that sounds like. Grindstone finally getting some standards. The breakdown of the exchange rate is rather odd as well, though this could be one of those the price makes sense in Russia situations. For $4.50 you'll receive 1,350 standards, $10.50 for 3,300, $19.50 for 6,900, $37.50 for 15,000 standards, and a whopping $99.99 for 42,500 standards. It's a shame that the developers didn't allow for $1 purchases like Gaijin's own War Thunder, and the pricing seems to be all over the place for various items, ranging from okay value to who would spend that much money? One of the main ticket items will be the premium ships. Thankfully they aren't flat out better than the earned ships, but they do come out completely aced, with several extremely useful buffs such as increased income, not needing to be repaired, 2 extra cargo spaces, and generating about 20% free synergy, compared to the earned ships' 5%. All in all, they have good value. They don't imbalance the game, but they have obvious advantages over the earned ships for the player's economy. The good news is that you simply can't buy your way to maximum tier right off the bat, and your premium purchases on ships are limited to a few tiers above your highest level ship within that faction. Hell, this game even does gold shells right by ensuring they don't do extra damage at all compared to the credits shells, but instead earn extra synergy for kills made with them, a rather interesting twist on the system. You can choose to purchase a premium pilot's license as well, which will earn you extra synergy, credits, and loyalty vouchers, and 2 additional loot searches per match. It comes in a myriad of amounts ranging from 1 day to 6 months. This is also rather useful as every single match victory will let you search for loot which can give you major items, crafting materials, or even weapons. With that extra synergy gain, you can easily ace your ships very quickly, and once the ship is maxed, you can spend more standards to transfer the synergy from your ship into free synergy for all your ships to use. You can also choose to use standards on cosmetic changes to your ships, but all these feel rather expensive for what they give you. Not that other games within the genre don't do the same thing, but paying for colors, decals, and etc. don't seem to do much, especially in this game where only you will ever see your ship in close enough detail to matter. However, the hilarious ability to buy taunts that will automatically play when you get a kill, with a personal favorite being, try a little harder. Finally, as mentioned before, if you want to set up your own guild, you'll need to pay for the privilege. Still, regardless of all of this, being forced to pay for a guild just seems a little off. We were pretty into this game when starting out, but it kind of burnt out pretty fast. When certain things began to show through, like the grind-style nature of advancing your ship tiers, the absurd early-tier queue times, and the severe advantage given to players with upgraded equipment, it began to sour our attitude for the game, but overall the game is pretty fun and simple to run space combat game. Given the free roam exploration options and well put together and varied PvE missions adds to the overall experience, so it just really depends on how this all balances out for you. Here's my final rating. While I feel I need to mention this because the term is being taken way out of context lately, this game works great as a casual distraction, meaning you can hop in and hop out for short bursts just for the fun of it. Sure, you'll need to place a lot more time into the game to get to the higher tiers, and high-level play likely brings in about a whole new level of play, but starting out it's pretty easy to play this with little time investment. If you like the idea of dogfighting but wish to add in futuristic weaponry and zero gravity, this is a solid sci-fi combat title. It's slick looking and very easy to run and doesn't seem to tax many PCs for how well it looks. Finally, having options beyond PvP content is always a nice alternative, and these PvE options adding exploration and interesting mission goals go well beyond the simple same PvP match but with bots options that most other games of this genre have for cooperative content. You want a guild or a corporation? You're paying for it. It's odd to pay actual money for something that's fairly common in the genre, and even with all the perks offered, you still need to earn them after a ton of grinding. Other uses of the points can of course be the premium ships, always the easiest way to jump into later tiers without as much of a grind, and fully capable ships with heavy boosts to free your synergy to get more easily caught up. Speaking of synergy, a lot of that will be caught up in your maxed ships until you pay to unlock it, and it's a faster alternative to the grind. Of course, since there's so many odd currencies to collect in order to upgrade your ship's arsenal, you can bypass this by using the paid currency, which brings on its own issues. The minute you get yourself into a new tier of combat and find your ship being torn apart in seconds by a player with purple level ammo who reflects your every return shot like a pile of spitballs, you might find yourself wondering if balance might be a little skewed in this game. Since your potential matches rarely cycle for a few options, even when the game holds you to the same PvE match for an hour before it changes over to a different option, you might feel you're spinning your tires in the mud, and the repetitiveness sets in pretty hard. Of course, doing all of this for a shot at gathering the staggering number of currency types seems to be a bit more ridiculous, considering that upgrading your gun from one level to the next might take hours or days of grinding because you suddenly don't have the right kind of money to do so. Alleviating that repetitiveness, balance unfairness, and currency disparity with the almighty dollar is easily something that can place this game into a pay-to-win status. Sure, these items are mostly earnable with play, but the sheer amount of grinding against the wall of undefeatable players and repetitive missions makes that about as viable as claiming that the gold shells in World of Tanks is no longer an issue because you can buy them with an absurd amount of credits. That is so not how this works. Next time, we'll take the ships back down to Earth. No, it's not World of Warships. Oh god, it's 3 a.m. and I didn't even record an end card thing? Oops, we'll do it live. Alright, if you want to check out our completely different last episode on MMO Grinder on Wakfu, you can click on the left over there. And if you want to see something slightly related to what's going on with Star Conflict with Gaijin's other game War Thunder, we did a backtrack not too long ago that you can check out by clicking on the right. Of course, feel free to follow me on Twitter at ChaosD1 for my personal account, and for show updates at MMO_Grinder. Somebody took the one without the space. Shoutouts are much lesser this time. The only person left we've got is once again Slipstream, who of course is still pretty busy at work, but would still like you to check out his blog at mindthenewbiedev.com for updates on a game that he plans on working on. If you'd like to check out Grindstone and see what we're all up to, you can check out my own personal site at mmogrinder.net, or go to mmogrinder.boards.net and check out our forums. Really, I'm completely out of things to say here, I'm just winging it right now.